Welcome, folks, to episode number 48 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. We're here today again with all three of the old men, Tom Lidiak, former coach, Bill Walker, former player, and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy for this episode. Well, our Cougars finished out the Big 12 slate in style, sweeping the regular season and postseason championships with a 74-75 blasting of BYU, followed by a 72-64 win over a hot Arizona team, both via upping our suffocating lead to the next level in preparation for March Madness. The brackets are now formally out. We're the third number one seed out in the Midwest region, which was a bit of a surprise given we supposedly requested the West, but put us anywhere because this Cougar team is ready for any team. We're also sponsoring a No Conference for Old Men Coug fans bracket on CBSSports.com for fans wanting to participate in and competing with the three old men for a chance to join us on a future episode. Bill, you got a comment on this?
Sure. Steve, you got more insight in terms of the instructions, but I know it's on Coug fans, and I'll give a little incentive to whoever'd like to enter the bracket challenge. One, whoever wins will have the opportunity to be a guest on one of our postseason episodes, and they can discuss their teams, what they think about this past year, what they think about next year. If you're a U of H grad, you can recap an unbelievable championship season and give predictions for 2025, 26. If you attend another school, we could discuss that as well. I mean, if you went to A&M, people could discuss how it felt to get knocked out of last year's NCAAs by Ryan Alvin at the end of our bench. UT fans can discuss getting swept by us last year, then jumping ship to the weaker SEC for both schools. You could discuss whether your basketball programs could possibly, although unlikely, ever ascend to U of H's level. And for our other conference rivals, we could discuss how it felt to see U of H enter the Big 12 and absolutely dominate years 1 and 2, and in year 2 winning the conference easily. And then lastly, for our tech fans out there, assuming you know how to fill out a bracket, we'll keep this as simple as possible. No, if you're on the podcast, we will not hit you with any multi-syllabic words. And if things get a little too difficult or complex for you, we will absolutely provide you with a coloring book and a box of crayons to keep you both entertained and, of course, challenged. And maybe we could talk about how a junior college possibly made it into the Big 12, but we'll save all that for after the bracket challenge.
Nice.
So good luck.
Okay, guys. So for this big March Madness episode of the pod, we're going to quickly summarize the two Big 12 tourney wins, but then quickly pivot to talking about March Madness brackets with specific attention to the Cougars Midwest bracket. So let's get into it in dissecting our, three wins over Colorado, BYU, and Arizona. Let's begin with post-game analysis of the wins to take the Big 12 tourney, and thankfully, no serious injuries. Then we'll transition to a more free-flowing discussion on the March Madness brackets, going from region to region to highlight interesting matchups, potential upsets, and who we see coming out from each region. Let's start with you first, Tom. What were some of the things you saw from a coach's perspective in the Big 12 championship wins?
I'll start off with Colorado. I think Colorado was like 3-17 in Big 12 play. I think the expectation was we just like run them out of the gym. 2 quick fouls on Milos that hurt. We got up by 14, double-digit lead. I think it was 21-7, and then we let them back in the game, let them get their confidence. Jawan, I think he had 2 points, 2 rebounds at half. Was not a great half for him. And then he sprained his ankle in beginning of the second half. Kelvin talked to a sideline reporter, and he described her performance as arrogant, basically meaning that we didn't treat Colorado like you're supposed to treat them. The most important game on the schedule is your next game, and I think he was pretty ticked about that. He actually told Jawan in a huddle, says, if I had somebody else to put in the game, I'd put him in the game. That's how, he wasn't too pleased with Juwan's play. But anyway, second half, we went out and built a comfortable lead again, and then they kind of came back and cut it to like 7 or 8. We ended up winning by 9. So Colorado, the good thing about that was, Juwan did get injured, but it looks like he's going to be able to play in the NCAA tournament. Kelvin on his radio show said on a scale of like 1 to 4, 4 being the most serious, Juwan was like in between a 2 and a 3. So,
really? So still,
so he'll be good to go. BYU game. That's the game we probably didn't miss Juwan as much as we missed in the Arizona game. Going into the BYU game, talking heads, they were going gaga over BYU. 9 in a row, 14-3 in their last 17 Big 12 games. Coach Kevin Young is an offensive savant. BYU is going to beat U of H. Richie Saunders is an NBA player. Diego Damon is a top NBA pick, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then according to Fran Fraschilla, his exact words, we came out and we punked them. 15 to 0 start. Held them scoreless for the first 7 minutes. They actually had 2 neck balls. In that, I think it was on the same possession too, because the guy shot a neck ball. That's when the ball gets wedged in between the rim and the backboard, and it's a jump ball. And I think BYU had the possession arrow, and then on the ensuing shot, they had another neck ball. Bill Raftery, that's what he calls them, and then he always says, one of my teams led the nation in neck balls one year. Anyway, built a 21-point halftime lead. At one point, we got up to 22 points. BYU cut it to 13, and the crowd started getting behind BYU. Terrence had a horrible turnover in that sequence, and then Kelvin pulled him out, and he put Sharp in, and then Sharp immediately hits a couple of threes to build the lead back to 19. That was all she wrote in that game. But that was the key sequence of the game as far as I'm concerned. From a coaching standpoint, especially with Juwan out, we were kind of forced to play small lineup with Terrence at the 4. BYU plays 4 perimeters around a big guy. Probably a blessing in disguise that we had to sit Juwan out and we started Terrence because we avoid the mismatches. By matching their lineup, you don't get beat off the dribble, forcing help, leading to open threes as much as when you have 2 bigs. And that will come in handy because in the Arizona game, we exploited their big lineup. So going on to the Arizona game, we had no Roberts again. Terrence's Achilles was bothering him a little bit. I thought that's a game we were missing Roberts a little bit because we couldn't throw it inside and get a basket. And Kelvin mentioned that on this radio show. He said, Arizona picked up that real quick, and so they just pushed their defense further and further out instead of just guarding the arc or guarding 28 feet. All of a sudden, they're out there 35 feet, pressuring the ball. We're down 33-28 at half. Caleb Love was good. Caleb Love in the first half, he was knocking down shots. I can't remember how many points he had, but he had quite a few. And then coming out of halftime, Kelvin mentioned this again on his radio show, just made a little tweak to our offense. Instead of having we were playing a 4 perimeter lineup, and instead of having the big come out and set screens and Arizona bringing 2 to the ball and then having like Milo's, have to give the ball up, we put our 5, just told him to stay in the dunker spot. And then we went to 2 guys in the slots, 2 guys in the corners. And then we just started doing it's called like a ghost screen. It's where you come up and you look like you're going to screen, but then you just slip out real quick to the other slot. To make a long story short, what that does is Arizona was switching, and the end result was Milos had a Waka on him. Yeah. And then that was our offense. He was able to take a Waka to the hole, shoot threes, whatever he wanted to do. So great move by a Hall of Fame coach who doesn't give enough credit for his offensive genius. People criticize. Even a guy on the radio show said, "Hey, coach, this is how this is why he gets a little prickly with some questions in the media and fans." A guy asked him a question, says, "Coach, you ever thought about setting a screen for a guy off the ball?" And Kelvin, next question. He said, next question. We do that. Kelvin's probably got 225 plays that involve some type of, down screen or pin down or whatever. But anyway, really good win against Arizona. We actually won the second half, 44-31. It was a great weekend for the Cougs to cut those nets. And even though I believe that the regular season championship is the one that counts, this is kind of like the cherry on top of the cake, winning the Big 12 tournament championship as opposed to the regular season championship.
Yeah, it's a nice warm up at least. So, Bill, how about your views to the 3 wins from a player's perspective?
Yeah, just a quick recap. Number one, and we all talked about this, getting through the tournament health and being healthy going into the NCAAs, and so that's good. With that said, I still picked us to win the tournament, as I assume did Tom, knowing how competitive we are, how competitive Kelvin is, and the fact that we're the best team in the Big 12. Roberts got hurt early the Colorado game, and I was very, very pleased to see him sit versus BYU and Arizona.
Yeah,
I also love how Sharp played throughout the entire 3 games. Kelvin had mentioned that he wanted the team to go inside more, go to the basket, and if we're missing shots, at least hopefully we could draw fouls and get to the line. I think everyone, including Wilson, Cryer, Uzan, did this for sure. They're all doing it, and it's been going on now for some time, kind of going back to that West Virginia game that we've mentioned quite a bit. But no one excelled to the extent that Sharp did, and I love the way that he's playing heading into the NCAAs. Once again, best of all, we're healthy heading into the NCAAs. And the last thing I'll mention about the tournament was, and I was getting calls from people, I was getting texts about the commentating. It just how outwardly Shambi and Fraschilla were
there you go,
cheering for the other team. And I quite honestly, and as you can imagine, I've watched a fair amount of basketball. I've never come across anything like that unless it's the home team's announcers, in which case, of course, it always happens. But on a nationally televised game and non-biased commentators, play-by-play guys, I've never heard anything like that. That shocked me. But whatever, we won. We're Big 12 regular season and conference champions, and we're on to the NCAAs.
Yeah, agreed. I think they just wanted a closer game.
Yeah,
more than anything else.
I do too. But they all want competitive, close games. But and I love Fraschilla, but I've never heard a guy like, I don't know, attaboy, there you go, and that kind of stuff. But you don't know how many times I said to the TV, could you just shut the F up, Fraschilla? I want to add one more thing, guys, to that Arizona game. When it comes down to what I call winning time, or Magic Johnson called winning time, I think it was the last 2:18 of the game. We had Milos, LJ, Malik, and Sharp on the floor with JVA. Uzan's 6'4", LJ 6'2" on a good day. Malik is 6'3".
Yep.
Sharp's 6'2", and they had their big lineup in there. They had Visar and Awaka in there, and they never touched the ball or got off a shot. They're two big guys. We didn't give up an offensive rebound.
Yep.
Milos had 2 defensive rebounds in that stretch there. Malik had an offensive rebound. So I thought that was pretty outstanding, that small lineup we had. And then on the other hand, Tommy Lloyd, who's considered one of the best offensive coaches in the game, they never got the ball to one of their bigs to take advantage of that. And speaking of winning time, there were 2 key offensive possessions for Arizona where they're down by 2. One was Love grabbed a defensive rebound on the other baseline. He went 92 feet. He tried to go 1-on-5. and against a set defense, and he traveled. He kind of ran into Malik, and Malik forced him to travel. So that was one possession where Arizona was down by 2. Javier comes down there and has that weird handoff to Milos, and JVA picks it up and he dunks, and it puts us up by 4. Arizona's next possession, Bradley goes one-on-one versus LJ. LJ forced him, kept him from his right hand, forced him into a turnover. Love never touched the ball on that. And the last possession, they had an air ball. Love came off a dribble handoff and a ball screen, and he shot an air ball. So those were Arizona's possessions in crunch time against us. LJ did a great job on Bradley. Bradley was getting to the rim earlier in the game, and LJ cut him off a couple of times and didn't let him get downhill with his right hand. So kudos to LJ and to Sharp and to Malik for the defensive job they played on Arizona's guards.
Yeah, so just quickly from an advanced analytics perspective, as we're running short on time at this point, and just looking at the 2 final wins, the formula was actually pretty simple yet effective in both cases. Turn it up a notch on D and stay true to our patient but balanced offensive philosophy this season. Both cases, staying the course resulted in breaking down the opponent's will in preparation for the actual real tourney here. So what we saw was consistent across the final 2 games with intense tourney-ready D that just suffocated both BYU and Arizona, 2 of the best offenses in the conference and the country. This was especially apparent from the 3-point line, where it was clear the staff had put a greater emphasis on coming into the postseason, limiting both teams, even Colorado, actually, in the game before that, to under 28% from 3-point range. Now, you guys know that I've been harping on this one area of our D that has regressed this season against the 3 since the calendar hit February. But you know what, guys? After this Big 12 tourney, our 3-point defense has hit our top 40 excellent threshold again, where we're at number 35 heading into the tourney. It was basically just reds across the board on the offensive side for both BYU and Arizona during our 2 games. 37% effective field goal percentage for BYU, 48% for Arizona. And on top of that, they had turnovers at 20% and 18% for both games. While on the flip side, offensively, we just played to our game. Balanced mix of 2s and 3s, making up our offensive points, keeping the teams off balance. What you'll notice as of late is a gradual uptick in our 3-point attempts versus 2-pointers for the games, where historically we've been really heavily weighted towards the 2-point range. What I'd like to see, especially given how well we shoot the 3s this year, is getting up over 20 3s per game in the tourney, because it just basically opens everything up. So that's something to keep an eye on. So now let's get to the March Madness brackets. As stated, we are the 3rd number 1 seed in the Midwest. Other number 1s were Auburn in the South, Duke in the East, Florida in the West. Let's start with our Midwest region first, where Tennessee is number 2, Kentucky number 3, Purdue number 4, and then 5 through 8, we have Clemson, Illinois, Kentucky, plus a tricky Gonzaga at number 8. What are your guys' initial thoughts of the region itself? How tough it is? How do you like our potential matchups? What are some of the interesting first-round games as well as potential upsets? And then who do you have going to the Elite 8 and Final 4? Bill, why don't you kick things off?
Aside from KenPom number 9, that is number 9 in KenPom, Gonzaga, who plays well historically in March and has no business being an 8th seed. And I think that obviously kind of stinks for us. It stinks for them too. Playing us in round 2, I'm not thrilled about, assuming they beat Georgia. That's not guaranteed, but likely. Other than that, I really like this region. I think we're absolutely Final 4 bound. I think Clemson and Purdue are from not very strong conferences this year. Clemson, especially from a weak conference. And I think both schools are a bit overrated. And quite honestly, I like us versus either Kentucky, Xavier, who I'll mention a little as we get into the brackets, or Tennessee. I think this is a good region for us. Gonzaga is the potential road bump, and other than that, I think we're fine.
Okay. And how about some of the other things in terms of like good matchups and things like that in the region that you're interested in seeing, as well as who you've got coming out from the region itself?
Okay, we're going through
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah. Go
Okay.
through the whole thing.
Okay. I've only got a couple of upsets in this region. I have and I wish we were waiting another day or two to make our predictions because I have right now I think Xavier Texas is going to be a good game. I think the winner beats Illinois. I have
Wow.
Xavier winning, and I have Xavier beating Kentucky.
Holy cow. Okay.
My
Cool.
only other early upset is Utah State over UCLA. Aside from that, I mean that's first round. Second
Yeah.
round, I mean I've Clemson a 5 over Purdue a 4, so it's not
Okay.
much of an upset. And I've got Xavier, like I said, Xavier the 11 over Kentucky a 3. In the end, I have us beating Tennessee, and I don't think Tennessee is going to be especially challenged until they meet us, and then they're done, and we go to the Final Four.
Nice. No, I love those picks, man. You went out on a limb. Love it. Tom, how about you from a coach's perspective on the Midwest region?
I have us, of course, winning the Midwest. I have us playing Georgia in the second game.
Okay. Wow.
Assuming we beat Southern Illinois, Edwardsville. And I only know 5 things about them. 1, they're from the Ohio Valley Conference. 2, they finished in second place. 3, they're also named the Cougars. 4, they're coached by Brian Baroni, son of Tony Baroni, used to be
Yep.
at Creighton, used to be at A&M.
A&M, yeah.
And most importantly, they lost to Doug Gottlieb's Green Bay team.
Oh my God, really?
So that's all I know about them. So I'm assuming, unless there's a meteor strike, we're going to advance to the second round. And my prediction is we play Georgia, and we beat Georgia. Next round, I'm looking at Clemson or Purdue, even though it wouldn't surprise me if High Point beats Purdue, because
Wow.
Purdue has, in their recent history, they've lost to some double-digit seeds, and you're looking at High Point as the 13th seed. But I don't know. Clemson, Purdue, 6 of one, half dozen the other. Flip a coin on
Yeah.
that one. But we beat them to go to the Elite Eight. I don't see Miami in our Midwest bracket this year lurking around. So we go on to the next round where we'll see either Tennessee or Kentucky, and I'm thinking it's going to be Tennessee. And then that gets us to the Final Four.
All right. Do you have any upsets in that region for your bracket? Any upsets?
Pardon, what's that again, Steve?
Do you have any upsets in your bracket in that region?
No, I pretty much went chalk the whole way. I attended Utah State for a year, so I'm always watching them. I love to see them beat UCLA, but I don't think they're going to do it. Here's one for you. Yeah. I have North Carolina beating San Diego State, then I have them beating Illinois to go to the next round. Oh, wow. It's like a big F you to everybody in the country. That's how those things usually work, right?
Yeah, it is. You're right. That would be pretty funny, though.
Big time, we're talking about North Carolina, big time underachiever, and then they dig deep and they find something to win a couple of games, but then I think it's going to come to end when they play Kentucky. But
are we really moving
upsets?
No. Yeah. We'll cover that later. The other regions later.
The other regions. Okay.
Yeah. We'll cover it later.
That's it for the Midwest.
Okay.
Yeah, I have us playing Clemson, beating them, and I have Tennessee beating Kentucky, and then I have us beating Tennessee, and then going to where is it this year? San Antonio.
San Antonio.
It
will be there. So from my perspective, and I looked at it strictly from an analytics perspective, I think we got by far the toughest region in the Midwest by virtue of having both Tennessee and the Zags in our quadrant. Ridiculous underseeding of the Zags, as Bill had mentioned, number 9, and Ken Pom, who should have been number 6, in my opinion, which makes the average Ken Pom ranking in this region at a low 14.6, where the next would be the South at 17.6, 18.6 for the East, and then just a terrible number of 19.3 for the West, where Memphis is inflated number 5. even if you move the Zags out and replaced with another Ken Palm ranked team that was around 32, this would still be the toughest region. But whatever, you've got to beat the top teams along the way to win the championships. We play well when we feel slighted, and it's like everyone is against us. And plus, this year's team is good enough to beat up on all comers. So basically, just bring it on, baby. Bill, you and I had talked about this in previous episodes around matchups, and we both agreed in wanting to avoid UConn and the Zags as number 8. So, of course, we got the Zags. Though, again, I do hate this matchup so early on because I respect the Zags, but honestly, it's really more of a too bad for them because I don't think they can match up with us with our rugged D and highly efficient offense this year. But that'll be a fun matchup on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I agree with you, Steve.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. It'll be a good test for us, right, for a round 2 game. Interesting games early on for me are like the Zags in Georgia, Clemson versus McNeese in the first round, potentially us versus the Zags, Illinois I've got versus Kentucky in the second round. I'm actually not predicting very many upsets early on in this region either, though I was tempted with Clemson and McNeese, but I am predicting a healthy Illinois over Kentucky, so we'll see. And finally, I do expect it will be a UH Tennessee in a heavyweight bout in the Elite 8, where, of course, I've got our Cougs coming through to the Final Four. Now let's go to the South region with Auburn, where Michigan State's number 2, ISU's number 3, A&M number 4. Then 5 through 8, we've got Michigan, Mississippi, Marquette, and Louisville. Again, initial thoughts of the region itself. How tough is it? What are some of the interesting first-round games with potential upsets? And then who gets to the Elite 8 and Final Four? Tom, you can go first here.
Okay, I'll start backwards. I have Auburn and Michigan State playing in the Elite 8, and then I have Auburn win that game and going to the Final Four, even though they're kind of limping to the finish line.
I know.
Yeah, losing 3 of their last 4.
I know.
Can you imagine if they had lost 3 or 4 to begin SEC play or middle SEC play? Would they still be that number 1 seed? I guess we'll never know. Not a whole lot of upsets here. I hate to say it, but I do have A&M beating Michigan to go to the Sweet 16.
Okay.
I have Iowa State beating Ole Miss to go to the Sweet 16. And then I have Iowa State losing to Michigan State. They're going to be without Keyshawn Gilbert.
Yeah.
Talking about the Cyclones there with a groin injury. And then Taman Lipsey, he's also nursing a groin injury too. It wouldn't surprise me if he tweaks that thing and, just like Marcus Sasser a couple of years ago.
I know
those groins. They're bad. They're bad news. Marquette, New Mexico. That's probably the game that intrigues me.
Yeah.
New Mexico has a fantastic guard in Donovan Dent. That's a 7-10 game. I do have Marquette advancing on that.
Okay.
Let's see. UT Xavier. I don't know who's going to win that one. Probably Texas, and that's probably not a bad thing because if Rodney Terry's job is on the line, maybe that
Tom
gives him another year. I don't know. Maybe it's a done deal behind the scenes. Maybe it's been done for a long time. But I do have Ole Miss beating whoever comes out of UT and Xavier. So
UT plays San Diego State.
What's that?
UT plays San Diego State.
Oh, do they?
No,
I thought San Diego
State plays UNC.
In the South, Carolina plays San Diego State. We're in the South region. It's Carolina, San Diego State.
Okay. So I had it wrong there. Okay.
Well, apparently we both did.
I had Texas in there. I don't know why. Anyway, they're not going anywhere anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Nice.
And probably along with New Mexico and Marquette, just on paper, the Louisville-Creighton first-round game is another one that's really intriguing.
Okay. Cool. How about you, Bill, from a player's perspective for the South region?
Well, I think almost every game other than the 1, the 2, the 116, the 215, I think every other game in this region is a really interesting game.
Yeah, I agree.
I ended up with 3 first-round upsets. I mean, if you want to consider Creighton as a 9 and upset over Louisville. I've got
we
Creighton,
count it.
and I think it's even a little bit more of an upset because Creighton plays Louisville in Lexington, so a bit more of a home game for Louisville. Of course, who knows? Maybe there'll be a lot of Kentucky fans there that boo Louisville, but I'm guessing it's going to be a bit more of a home game for Louisville. But I've got Creighton winning that. I've got the University of San Diego as a 12. This is my 12-5. Well, actually, one of my 12-5s. I think San Diego beats Michigan. I think a lot of people are high on Michigan because they won the Big Ten tournament. They got outplayed by Wisconsin. I mean, it was a close game, but Wisconsin was beating them the entire game, and Michigan, kind of took charge and won the game right at the end. But I'm not a huge fan of Michigan. I think San Diego wins this game. And then where you guys like Carolina, even though they've been up and down this season, I think when it's tournament time, I'm going to ride San Diego State. I think San Diego State beats Carolina, and I think San Diego State, and I struggled with this, but I think San Diego State beats Ole Miss.
Wow. Okay.
I also have the University UC San Diego beating A&M.
Oh, 2 rounds. Nice.
After that, so yes, I have a 12 seed making the Sweet 16. I really struggled with Marquette over New Mexico, and I really liked New Mexico's point guard, but in the end, I took Marquette. And after that, I really struggled with Michigan State beating Marquette. I think Michigan State's a bit overrated, but in the end, other than San Diego, it's chalk. It's Auburn, Iowa State, Michigan State. I have Auburn and Michigan State.
Okay.
Only because of the injuries to Iowa State's backcourt.
Yeah, agreed.
And I have Auburn coming out of the South.
Okay, nice. Wow, interesting picks. Now, again, for me, from an analytics perspective, Auburn got the second toughest region in the South. Though I'm actually going to say that Florida really got the next toughest region after ours, if you take out the ridiculous Memphis as a number 5. But still some tricky games here where I don't think the matchups are that favorable for Auburn team that has lost through the last 4 games. Similar to us, and I know the ACC is very weak this season, but I think Auburn got a tough draw to potentially face number 8 Louisville in Lexington, Kentucky, right, in round 2. But honestly, it's like us where it's just really more too bad for Louisville because I actually think they were underseeded. But
agreed.
Yeah, they're going to lose to Auburn on Saturday. Interesting games for me in the South. I think, as you guys had mentioned, Michigan, UC, San Diego, A&M, Yale will be fun. Mississippi and UNC, which is what I'm predicting in round 2. Round 1, I guess, the true round 1. Marquette, University of New Mexico. And then potentially Auburn, Louisville, A&M in Michigan, or UC San Diego, Mississippi, ISU, Marquette, Michigan State in round 2. So like you highlighted, man, lots of potential great matchups in this region. I'm, like you, also predicting UC San Diego to upset Michigan. I think it's about matchups, quite honestly, because Michigan turns over the ball a ton, and UC San Diego turns people over a ton. And then I actually have UNC, as I had stated, getting into round 1, and I actually think they're going to upset Ole Miss for a shocker early on, so we'll see. And finally, I do expect it will be Auburn, Michigan State in another physical bout in the Elite 8, where I actually have Michigan State upsetting Auburn to go to the Final Four. So now let's get to the East region with Duke, where Bama is number 2, Wisconsin number 3, Arizona number 4, and then 5 through 8, we've got Oregon, BYU, St. Mary's, and Michigan State. Again, initial thoughts on the region itself, how tough it is, what are some of the interesting first-round games, plus potential upsets, and then who you've got in the Elite 8 and Final Four. Bill, you can go first on this one.
Yeah, I have fewer upsets in this region than anywhere else. There's a fair amount of chalk here. Really, the only upset I have in the first round is at the expense of one of our Big 12 opponents,
Ooh.
and I have VCU beating
Oh.
BYU, and I also, and this is literally a coin flip. I'm taking VCU over Wisconsin, but yeah, I struggled mightily with that pick, and maybe just because I like picking upsets by nature, did I do that? But other than that, I've got chalk. I have Alabama in the next round beating not the next round. Next round beating VCU. I have Arizona Duke. I have Arizona. This is where Duke. This is where the end of the road comes for them. I really, really thought about taking Mississippi State over Duke, and I think Duke's going to struggle with State. But I have them getting by and then losing to Arizona. I have Alabama beating Arizona, and Alabama will be the team coming out of the East.
Wow. Very nice. Tom, how about yours from a coach's perspective?
I have trouble getting this word out of my mouth, but it's going to be Duke. That region. Maybe since I pick them, then they'll lose.
Chalk.
But
yeah.
Chalk.
Yeah.
Here's the upsets I have, and it's two of our Big 12 brethren. Like Bill, I think VCU is going to beat BYU. VCU, very well coached. Ryan Odom, he was at UMBC when they were 16 seed, and they beat number 1 seed Virginia. Then he went to Utah State for a year or two. Now he's back on the East Coast. I think his wife wanted to get back to the East Coast, but the style of play of VCU is probably going to give BYU some problems. And when you're BYU and you're down by 20, and you go to a timeout and your coach is talking about offense, that happened against us when we played them. Dude, you're down by 22 and you're talking about we need to shoot more threes, more threes. And, how about talk about defense and rebounding? But anyway, I have VC over BYU. And then another tough matchup for our Big 12 bros is Akron and Arizona. And I have Akron.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Nice. I love it. I love it.
But you're not the only one who's picked that, but I just don't see it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, Tommy Lloyd is kind of struggling in the NCAA tournament, You never know what you're going to get with Caleb Love. Good Caleb, bad Caleb. You just don't know. But anyway, I have Duke playing Mississippi State, beating them. I have Oregon beating Liberty, playing Akron, and then Oregon advancing. Wisconsin over VCU, Bama over St. Mary's, and then I have Duke playing Bama in the Elite Eight, and then Duke winning that game. So
wow,
that's that side of the bracket. Grant Nelson is going to play in probably the second game. First game, Bama plays Robert Morris. And they're definitely going to win that game. For one thing, Robert Morris, I think he's 300 years old. So picking on an old man.
There you go. Hey, we love the old man.
Yeah, he's really old. Robert Morris is good old Bobby. But Nelson is going to play, I think, in that second game against the Vanderbilt St. Mary's winner. I think it's going to be St. Mary's. We'll just have to see how effective he is. There was some talk for a while there that Nelson might have missed the whole tournament.
Really? Interesting. Okay. We'll see. For me, for the East, I believe Duke, surprise, surprise, got the easiest region again, right? Struggling Bama as a number 2, overrated Wisconsin as a number 3. But thankfully, at least for me, we've got Arizona here for a nice opportunity for a statement win, coming in as the number 4 seed. Interesting games early on for me in the South, or in the East, that is. Mississippi State, Baylor, BYU, VCU. Then you've got potential matchups of Duke versus Baylor, Arizona versus Oregon in round 2. Then possibly a Duke, Arizona, or possibly BYU, Bama in the Sweet 16. So lots of, I'll just call them intriguing possibilities here. But again, very weak region. I am predicting Baylor to upset Mississippi State And then I'm much higher on BYU than you guys because I've got BYU over Wisconsin. And then I've also got them actually beating Alabama as well. So, hey,
First
call
one
me,
to
call me a
115
Big 12
wins.
homer, baby. So-
Fentanyl. Jeez, we need to get you
yeah,
into rehab.
I know. So, I mean, ultimately, I have to go with Duke advancing to the Final Four. And quite honestly, this region is so weak. I feel like they could get to the Final Four without Cooper Flag. So, again, it doesn't surprise me, but
I don't know.
yeah, really? You don't think so?
I think it's gonna be a tough matchup, assuming that they play Mississippi State. I think
Okay.
they'd handle Baylor, but I think Mississippi State is a really tough matchup for Duke.
Okay, then I hope you're right. I hope Mississippi State makes it and gives them a go here. So we'll see. Now, let's finally go to the West region with Florida, where St. John's is number 2, Tech is number 3, Maryland number 4, and then 5 through 8, we've got Memphis, Missouri, Kansas, and UConn. Again, initial thoughts on the region itself, how tough it is, where there's interesting early games and potential upsets, as well as who you've got for the Elite 8 and Final Four. Tom, you can go first.
Well, make a long story short, I got Florida, so I have all 4 number 1 seeds making it to the Final Four. Probably
last year as well.
Is that right? I don't remember. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna call you. I'm gonna never call you Tom again. Your new name is Chalk.
Nice.
Yeah. I spent too many years filling brackets out and going for the underdog, and they'd make it really, really close, and they'd lose by 1, and then your whole bracket would be blown up. But a game I think to watch is Colorado State and Memphis. I have Colorado State winning. Remember this name, Neek Clifford.
Yeah,
he's one heck of a player for Colorado State. They're on a roll right now. They absolutely destroyed Utah State twice in the past couple of weeks. I think one game was in the tournament, their conference tournament. The other one I think might have been played at Utah State, but they're on a roll. They're Nico Medved, really good coach, has them clicking right now. Kansas, Arkansas, that's another game. Flip a coin. I do have kind of held my nose and picked KU on that one. Then I have KU. I have Kansas playing St. John's. I have St. John's winning that one.
Okay.
You got Rick Pitino going strong at 73 years old.
Yep.
He doesn't look like he's slowing down any at all. I have Drake beating Missouri. Drake and their 4 D2 transfers. I have them beating Missouri. So there's your upset right there. I have Tech over UNC Wilmington. Drake and Tech. I have Tech winning. I'm tempted to pick Colorado State over Maryland. Actually, I'm tempted to pick Grand Canyon over Maryland.
Wow.
I still might do that.
Okay.
But as of right now, I have Maryland down, and then I have Maryland beating Colorado State. But I'd love to see a Colorado State Grand Canyon game. I think that'd be a really good one. UConn, Oklahoma. Who cares on that one? You got the best effing coach in the country going up against Porter Wagner. I mean, Porter, what's his name? Mosier. Porter Mosier. I do have UConn. Then I have Florida playing UConn. Florida's going to beat them. Florida playing St. John's in the Elite 8, and then Florida going to the Final Four.
Okay. Good picks. How about you, Bill? What are your thoughts on the West?
In the West, I am not too dissimilar early on from Tom, but it changes a bit. My upsets, I have Colorado State over Memphis, and only because Hunter from Racine, Wisconsin, is out. I'm not as down on Memphis as you guys are, and I know much like Tom shows love all the time for Kansas, I know, Steve, you're the same way with Memphis.
Yes.
Yeah. but I liked Memphis, but I do have Colorado State beating them, and I do have Colorado State beating Maryland after that because
okay.
Maryland's got a strong starting five, but they've got nothing after that, and I think that Colorado State beats them. I also have Drake beating Missouri, and my last upset. Oh, and by the way, with Drake beating Missouri, you may not have noticed this, and no reason why you should have, but I have all 4 11s winning.
Wow.
And my final upset, so that Patino and Calipari coach against each other in the next round, I do have Arkansas beating Kansas. I have no faith in Kansas right now.
Yeah.
Florida over UConn, like I said, Colorado State over Maryland, Tech over Drake, St. John's over Arkansas, Florida over Colorado State, who beats Maryland,
Okay.
and then Tech over St. John's.
Okay.
Yeah,
I got that too.
I like Tech, and Tech over Florida.
Whoa. Okay, so
So
you've got 2 Big 12 teams in the Final Four.
I have two Big
Nice.
12 and 2 SEC, and
Holy cow.
and this is as close as I've probably come in eons to my friend Chalk, who took all 4 number ones. I have Auburn and U of H 1 seeds, and I have Bama a 2 and Tech a 3.
Okay, got it. No.
Hey,
Yeah.
real quick for the record, guys. For the record, I haven't submitted my bracket on the No Conference for Old Men, but I'm gonna go with Grand Canyon over Maryland.
Wow. Nice.
I
Wow.
just
You guys
just
have no faith in Maryland at all. Neither of you.
No, Derek Queen, he's going to be a good pro. He doesn't play a lick of defense.
I just wish they had some depth.
Yeah. No, I mean they play D, Tom. Their metrics are really good on both sides, offense and defense. I mean,
okay, but I still say I'm going with Grand Canyon.
Okay.
And then Colorado State over Memphis, and then I have Colorado State over Grand Canyon to make it to the Sweet 16. But that's when their run's going to end.
Okay.
Colorado State loses to Florida, and then Nico Medved becomes the next University of Iowa
coach. Yeah, that's the rumor. That's the rumor going around.
I'm 0 for 1 because I said I'd be shocked if DeVries didn't get the Iowa job. So 0 for 1.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Well, I thought I sent you guys a note, or maybe I posted it on the Veer, where basically they were saying Iowa, the job is actually not highly regarded out in the marketplace because their NIL is second lowest in the Big Ten. And so no one wants to touch that.
So they had 3 guys already hit the portal, so
they're paying players in corn.
But the candidates aren't going to want to attach their name to that because it's like failure waiting to happen. So we'll see who they get. I'm thinking it's McCollum, right? Is going to be the one.
That'd be a jump from D2 to Drake to Big Ten in a span of 2 years.
I know, crazy, right?
Hey, he couldn't do any worse than some of these other coaches around the country. He's a proven winner. Yeah. Bo Ryan went from D3 to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I think he was there a year or 2 years max, and then he went to Wisconsin, and we know what kind of run he had there.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can coach, but in this era of NIL, it's turned the whole thing on its no telling as a coach who can coach in this era and who can't.
Yeah. So for me, for the West, Florida's got what I consider the second toughest region. And St. John's with Patino as a tough number 2, underrated Tech with everyone healthy as a number 3, and a Maryland team that I actually love here as a number 4 because their metrics are stellar. So like us, Florida got the second number 8 that I wanted to avoid in UConn. So that will be a possible great test on Sunday for them. Other interesting games early on for me in the West are UConn OU in round 1, Memphis, Colorado State, as you guys had mentioned, Missouri Drake, and KU Arkansas in the first round. Potentially Florida, UConn, and KU St. John's in round 2. So some great matchups in the West. I am actually predicting CSU to upset Memphis and then Tech over St. John's in the Sweet 16. And so if you look at a Florida Tech game in the Elite 8, I actually hate to admit this. I actually have Florida advancing. And as you guys remember, I had Florida as one of the most overrated teams coming in. And boy, I got to say that I was completely wrong on that. So now let's finally go to your Final Four and championship participants. Who've y'all got, guys? And what's your predictions in the championship game? Bill, you can go first.
Okay, well, like I mentioned, U of H a 1, Auburn a 1, Alabama a 2, and Tech a 3. And by the way, the thing I'm going to say about Auburn is, yes, they've lost 3 of 4, but they lost on a last-second shot to Sears to Alabama at home, and that was a game where they're kind of maybe, I don't know if you want to call them less than intelligent, overly emotional, whatever. Baker Mazzara got thrown out, and he also got thrown out when they lost in the first round to Yale last year. So Auburn could have easily won that game. So it's not entirely like, oh, they've lost 3 of 4. I mean, they did still lose 2 of 4,
but they're all tough teams.
They do lose 3, but they really should have won that one. And I've got them beating Tech. This was a kind of a close one, but I have them beating Tech. I have us beating Alabama in the rematch, and not at all surprising, I have us beating Auburn in the rematch.
Okay, what's your predicted score? I don't know if you did that or not. Of the championship game, us over Auburn.
77-72.
Okay, close one. Okay,
and that just popped out of my mouth.
Love it. That's great. How about you, Tom? What's your Final Four and predictions for the championship game?
I have Auburn, Florida. Florida beating Auburn. I have Duke, U of H beating Duke. And then I have U of H over Florida in the final. And I have that is 83-75.
Wow, high scoring game in the championship game. I like it. So I've got, as a reminder, us. I got Michigan State in as the only number 2. Then I've got Duke and Florida in the Final Four. I've got us with a nice revenge game where we get to beat up on Duke to get to the championship game, which I will love if that actually happens. Then I've got Florida over Michigan State. So for us versus Florida, I fully admit again, completely bombed on underestimating Florida. They are an elite team with great depth. However, I believe that given this is in San Antonio, we're healthy, that Florida will not be able to stay with us for 40 minutes. Our relentlessness on D is greater than anything they have seen in the SEC, and we win in a close one. I'm predicting 73-68, and we get to celebrate our first national championship in men's hoops. So that's it. I think all 3 of us have got, obviously, UH is winning it all. And that's it for our 48th episode of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. We hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We are also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and be on the lookout next week as the next episode drops.
Sign up for the bracket.
Yes, sign up for the bracket at the GoCoogs.com website. And it'll be posted there. Take care, everyone.